What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we've got another live fantasy football mock draft for you back on FantasyPros with a 12-team full PPR setup. We've got the third pick overall. Roster-wise, typical setup: one quarterback, two RBs, two wide receivers, a tight end, a flex, and then 5 bench spots. But that's pretty much all you need to know. We can get into this draft. And while we wait for it to load, a quick reminder: if you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, let us hear it in the comment section, along with any questions you guys might have. Drop them there. We'll do our best to answer them all. And in the meantime, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. And while you're there, get yourself a copy of the 2021 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Everything you could want at a great value. Details in the description. But with that being said, let's get into this thing. The first 2 picks have been made. McCaffrey, Kamara, zero issue with that. Sometimes, you're going to see Dalvin Cook instead of Kamara. That's totally fine as well. Here, because Dalvin Cook drops to us at the 103, I'm going to be selecting him. I have him higher in my rankings as opposed to a Derrick Henry and an Ezekiel Elliott. I think he's going to be a little bit more heavily utilized than Zeke. I think he's a better pass catcher than Derrick Henry. And for that reason, he's going to be the pick here. He's typically the usual slam dunk 102 pick. I get him here at 103, so I'm not too upset by that. Let's get Dalvin Cook on the team. But more importantly, let's see what happens in the next couple of rounds in terms of value picks. And we'll break it down to see if there have been any great selections, any steals, any reaches. So you can see it here on the draft board after our pick of Dalvin Cook. Derrick Henry, Ezekiel Elliott, nothing too crazy there. Stephon Diggs, the first wide receiver off the board at the 106. Again, a little bit too early for me. I'd rather be taking some more running backs there. Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor, guys of that, caliber. And speaking of Aaron Jones, he goes at the 107, followed by Devontae Adams at the 108. Eckler at the 109. I think that's a good spot for him. Again, I've said I would draft him much earlier as well. Then 2 wide receivers off the board, Calvin Ridley and Tyreek Hill. I love Calvin Ridley. Would I take him above Tyreek Hill in full point PPR? It's close, but I'd probably still give the edge to Tyreek Hill. Saquon Barkley with the last pick in the first round, I think that's probably pretty appropriate. I've said this before. If you take Barkley with your first pick, you should probably back him up with a solid running back. That did not happen here. Instead, that team goes DeAndre Hopkins, Travis Kelce in the second round, followed by Clyde Edwards-Helaire, run-on running backs here, in fact. Clyde, Chubb, Najee, Jonathan Taylor. Great value on Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is kind of becoming one of the better value picks in the second round. Then you see Keenan Allen, Antonio Gibson, A.J. Brown. I was really, really hoping Antonio Gibson or Brown would get back to us. I think they're very good value picks as well at that point in time towards the end of the second round. But let's see what we have left available to us currently. And the guys that I'm looking at: Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift. Could be a little bit better, but I think right now I don't want to necessarily reach on one of these running backs. I'm going to get one of my wide receivers that I feel good about, and that's between Justin Jefferson and DK Metcalf. Honestly, the only reason I'm going to give DK Metcalf here the slight edge, I've already got Dalvin Cook. I don't want to load up on a running back and a wide receiver, both from the Vikings. That's a little bit too dicey for me. I'll do the stack with quarterback, running back, quarterback, wide receiver. But running back and wide receiver, I usually try to avoid that unless I'm getting very, very good value. And this is right around where these guys are being drafted. So, if Jefferson is there for me in the third round, then okay, we can have a conversation. But that's not the case. And let's see some craziness here, because I witnessed a couple of picks that are rather interesting. So after a DK Metcalf pick, you see Joe Mixon, then you see Justin Jefferson. Nothing crazy there. DeAndre Swift with the first pick in the third round. Depending on how you feel about Swift, could be a little bit early. But the biggest shock so far here, no question about it, TJ Hawkinson with the second pick in the third round. I love TJ Hawkinson. Don't get me wrong, I do. But you should be drafting Darren Waller ahead of TJ Hawkinson. Darren Waller is still available for us here in the third round. TJ Hawkinson is, at the earliest a fourth round pick, a third round pick, and at that, the second pick in the third round way, way, way too early. But I would say this is one of those built-in variabilities with these computers here on Fantasy Pros. I think for the most part, it will kind of equalize and there won't be too much other craziness here. So with that being said, we can get back to the big board here. Waller does become a good value. I'm not going to lie here at this point in the third round. He's back in practice, so nothing hopefully to worry about. Other wide receivers, Allen Robinson, McLaurin, CeeDee Lamb. I think somebody like a Cooper Kupp can fall to us in the fourth round if we get Darren Waller here. So hopefully like one of those type of wide receivers falls to us. Maybe we can get a Darrell Henderson. That might be a little bit optimistic, but he's ranked 47th overall on the big board, the overall rankings. So what I'm honestly thinking here is let's see what happens if we take Darren Waller. I can't get too upset at this value. I think essentially, again, you're getting a wide receiver one at the tight end position. Let's see how this pans out. All things considered, getting him about a round later than Travis Kelce. So interesting couple next selections here. It's not really breaking our way, spoiler alert, but let's look at the draft board again. So after our Darren Waller selection, you see George Kittle, another tight end, then a run on wide receivers. That's not what we were hoping to see. CeeDee Lamb, Allen Robinson, McLaurin, Patrick Mahomes, the first quarterback off the board with the 8th pick in the third round. Then Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp both in the third round, followed by Dobbins and Chris Carson to, kind of end that run. Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, then the first 2 picks in the fourth round, followed by Montgomery. Then Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Tyler Lockett, Myles Gaskin. I would say that's a bit early for Myles Gaskin, all things considered. Then finally, you see Julio Jones and Deontay Johnson. So a couple things that stick out to me here. First and foremost, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp being drafted one right after the other. I endorse that wholeheartedly. Chris Carson going in the third round, that's the way it should be. Any later, and to me, that becomes a great, great value pick. Amari Cooper, early fourth round selection. I like that as well. I don't think he should be drafted that much later than CeeDee Lamb. I like Cooper when he's healthy. Obviously, that's the main thing with Cooper. I think he is just an integral part to this offense as CeeDee Lamb. Then, some other picks. Tyler Lockett, usually you might see him drop a little bit further. Myles Gaskin, I think it's a bit of a reach with the 7th pick in the fourth round. Then Deontay and Julio Jones here in the fourth round. That's kind of what I expected. But let's get back to our cheat sheet. And there is a name here that makes it back to us that I was mentioning before. That is Darrell Henderson. So we maybe get a little bit lucky there with Darrell Henderson. And I'm not going to question it. I have him ranked higher than Miles Sanders. You better believe that. I don't believe in that backfield at all. So we're going to add Darrell Henderson here. We're not even going to, double guess that and forget about the reach. That's you can we're just getting our guy. That's what the point of that selection is. So we got Dalvin Cook. We've got Darrell Henderson. I feel good about that combo. Metcalf and Darren Waller. So right now, we could use a wide receiver. Let's see what's left available. After a selection of Henderson, you saw Dak Prescott, Ayuk, Higgins, and Claypool go off the board. So could be better for wide receiver. Again, this is what happens when you take a tight end early. I like to illustrate that because if we, for example, hadn't gone Darren Waller in the third round, we could have had a combination of DK Metcalf with an Allen Robinson, with a McLaurin, with a CeeDee Lamb. So I think that's always worth mentioning. And right now we could have gotten like a Kyle Pitts. So I would rather prefer that combination, but we got a little bit greedy with Darren Waller. So it is what it is. Now we kind of have to answer the question, is it better to go with, a Miles Sanders here, a Josh Jacobs, or with somebody, at the wide receiver position that maybe might be considered a little bit of a reach? So to answer that question, I don't believe in Miles Sanders. I don't believe in Josh Jacobs. I would rather take Mike Davis than both of those guys. Quarterback, I think if we take a quarterback here, really putting ourselves behind the 8 ball to some extent. So I'll pass on quarterback. I'll get a flex player here. I'll get Mike Davis in the 5th round. I like the upside as far as pass catching ability for Mike Davis. So let's draft him. Probably going to be considered maybe a little bit of a reach, but, getting running back depth is important in my eyes. And Mike Davis as your 3rd running back, you could do a lot worse. So again, let's go back to the draft board, see what has taken place. We still only have 1 wide receiver, but, again, keep in mind what we did at the tight end position to kind of make up for that. We'll see if it pays off or not. After our Mike Davis selection, you see Josh Allen, then Judy, then Miles Sanders, then Odell, James Robinson, then Thielen and Jamar Chase, Lamar Jackson, and Kyle Pitts at the end of the 5th round. So great value on Pitts there. That's probably where he should be drafted, but in some of your leagues, you might see him as an end of the maybe 3rd round, middle of the 4th round type of selection. That's how high people are on him. Then a huge run on tight end in the 6th round. This is crazy. You see Robbie Anderson, then 3 straight tight ends: Andrews, Fant, Thomas, Boyd, Tyler Boyd sandwiched in between, then another 3 tight ends: Tunyon, Goddard, Higbee, and then Travis Etienne. So we get a little bit lucky here, I would say, because, look, Kyler Murray is still available. I would say Josh Jacobs, as much as I don't like him, he is a good value pick here as well. But here I'm going Kyler Murray. Yes, I said last round if we had gone a quarterback, that would have been a little bit rough. We would have had to maybe reach a little bit on a flex position, but I'm going Kyler Murray here. At this point, end of the 6th round, I think that's a very, very good value. I love his upside to potentially be the QB1 for the 2021 fantasy football season. So to me, this is a no-brainer of a pick. Now, we've got our quarterback, we've got our tight end. We need to get our wide receiver too here is what we need to do. So I'm looking for upside. And guys that I'm identifying. Juju Smith, I think he's going to be rather inconsistent, potentially the wide receiver 3 on that offense. Sutton, I don't believe in the quarterback situation in Denver. Brendan Cooks, we don't know what's going on with Deshaun Watson. Deebo Samuel, I could take a chance on Deebo Samuel. Shark, Devonta Smith, Antonio Brown, Landry. So we're going to have to do some finagling here at the wide receiver position. Our next couple of picks will definitely, be centering around that position. Kareem Hunt here is tempting as another, kind of depth piece at the running back position. I think, even though he's the backup to Nick Chubb, he does have standalone value. So especially in full PPR setups, I think I'd be all right rolling with him as a flex position. So he's definitely very, very tempting at this point in time. It's between him and Deebo Samuel, and I'll probably honestly give the edge to Kareem Hunt. I think there's more guys in the caliber of Deebo Samuel than there are running backs left that I would feel comfortable like I do with Kareem Hunt in these PPR setups. So let's go with Kareem Hunt here. Yes, we're loading up on the running back position. I'm all right with that. It's the most important position in fantasy football. So, I don't mind taking Kareem Hunt where we did. And, you can even see it, FantasyPros acknowledging that it's a good value selection. Now, the more interesting thing, again, will be what we do in this 8th round with our wide receivers. Because looking at the picks after Kareem Hunt, a lot of guys that I really liked are off the board. Juju Smith, Edmonds, Melvin Gordon, Ronald Jones. So a run on running backs. Then Antonio Brown, was hoping he could get to us. Not the case. Javonte Williams, Rodgers, Damian Harris, Herbert. So I guess I'm happy we got Kareem Hunt where we did because there was a huge run on running backs. And we're stacked at the position right now. You see Sermon, Michael Carter, Raheem Mostert being drafted, then Cortland Sutton, Cooks, Corey Davis, Fournette, Debo, and Zach Moss. So Debo lasted a lot longer than I anticipated. But let's get back to our cheat sheet. And here we got to make some decisions. At wide receiver, what do? Do you believe in Devonta Smith and that offense? At this point in time, I'd be willing to take a risk. I'm going to be loading up on wide receivers, so the fact that we get Devonta Smith and he's going to be inserted into our starting lineup. Don't take too much stock into that. So I'm going to get Devonta Smith here, and I'm going for the upside. That's what we're doing at this point in time. Looking at other wide receivers that I like that I think have pretty good upside, I'm going to go with probably Marvin Jones. I like his upside. I think he can absolutely be the number one wide receiver in Jacksonville. So let's add him here. We're going to be getting a lot of wide receivers in the next couple of rounds. I'll highlight some of these selections here, but right now it's going to be pretty, focused on the wide receiver position for us. After Marvin Jones, you see Tony Pollard. So maybe a run on some backups now. Brady, Tannehill, Hurts. So some quarterbacks as well. Ingram, Kenyon Drake, David Johnson, Shark, James Conner. Then you see those running backs again. Jamal Williams, who I really like there. Edwards, James White, Matthew Stafford, Dillon, Lindsey, McKissick, Madison, and Tariq Cohen. So right now, I do want to point something out. I think we've gotten to the point in time in the 10th round where somebody like a Michael Thomas, who's a luxury pick, but for us would also potentially, if he comes back at a reasonable time, would be a good investment. And he would be, again, I've said it, regardless of how much time Michael Thomas misses, when he comes back, he's a wide receiver one. So I'm going to add him. He's going to be a guy that just kind of sits on the bench for a while, but I'm okay with it, kind of looking for that long-term investment. And I've said with Michael Thomas, if you get him in the 3rd round, that's good value. Or in the 10th round, I should say, that's good value. Excuse my slip up there. So we got Michael Thomas. Here, I'm going to get another wide receiver that I really like, Russell Gage. I think he's the number 2 wide receiver in Atlanta. People are absolutely sleeping on that. And, do so at your own risk is all I'll say about that. But we've got one last selection to make. Let's see, what kind of value is left. Do we need another quarterback? I'd say not really, considering we've got Kyler Murray. So I'm not all that enticed by the guys that are left, Matt Ryan, Mayfield, Tua. Running back, it's all backups at this point in time. We could have gotten an Alexander Madison to back up Dalvin Cook earlier on, but we kind of had to focus on the wide receiver position, so we passed it up. Tight end, I've got Darren Waller, so I'm not sweating that either. So that kind of leads us back to the wide receiver position. I'm looking at these names, and somebody that potentially, kind of stands out for me is an Amon-Ra St. Brown. I really like his upside as a rookie wide receiver. I think he can get a lot of targets. Yes, it'll probably be considered a reach, but I'm all right with that. I think we've done an all right job kind of shoring up the wide receiver position. We've got our wide receiver 1 in DK Metcalf, and from there, we'll be able to figure it out. We've got a lot of flexibility at the flex position, a lot of depth at running back, so, I'm happy with the way this kind of worked out. Was a little bit dicey for a while. Let's see what kind of grade we get here. I'll be curious to see. So we get a pretty high grade. We get an A+ grade. Do I agree with that? No, I don't think this is an A+ team. I think it's lower. I think it's a B+. Best case scenario, A-. The reason for that is obviously the wide receiver 2 spot. If you tell me Michael Thomas comes back in a month, then all right, we can have a conversation about this being a very, very good team. But in the meanwhile, I'm going to have to do some, kind of magic at the wide receiver position with either, Devonta Smith, Marvin Jones, Russell Gage, Amon-Ra St. Brown. But again, it could be worse. DK Metcalf, also a bit of a risky wide receiver in my opinion. So I can't give myself an A on this roster. But hey, let me know your thoughts on the team along with any questions you guys might have. I'll do my best to answer them all. And again, if you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. And lastly, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. And while you're there, get yourself a copy of the 2021 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Everything you could want at a great value. Details in the description. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.